And here we are talking to someone who's actually learning to be an astronaut. Hello.
Hi, my name is Charlie Detelich, and I am a planetary geologist. So, what that means is that I study rocks on different planets and moons all across our solar system and throughout the universe.
Tell us about how you got to be where you are.
So, I went to college for geology and I graduated last year. And while I was in college, I met a professor there who was another planetary geologist. And I've always been really interested in space. And so when he became a new professor at my school, I asked him if I could work with him. And he kind of took me under his wing as like his special student, basically, and kind of helped me figure out how to get into the job that I wanted to be in. So he was a scientist who studied Mars, and he asked me basically, is there any place in the solar system that you want to study? And I said I wanted to study Iapetus, which is a moon of Saturn. And so I was really interested in these mountains on the moons of Saturn and how they got there, because a lot of science is just kind of figuring out how did something form or why does it look like that. And so that kind of started my passion for planetary science. And then while I was in college, I had an internship at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. So I worked there for a summer and I was studying Mars, and I was working on how rivers carve through the rocks on Mars. And I got to go to Hawaii for that and study how rivers cut through the rocks in Hawaii, because Hawaii is really similar to Mars.
So I've got a question about the moons of Saturn, you said.
Yeah.
How did you, like, obviously you didn't go there and see for yourself.
Right.
What did you do?
So we have different spacecraft that we send to all of the different planets, and they go and take pictures of everything. And they take pictures and they could measure like the elevation of the surface. So like how high the different mountains are. So like when you're using Google Maps and it you can make it in 3D and like look in 3D. And we have that for other moons and planets in the solar system.
Wow.
So I was mostly looking at photos and elevation and trying to figure out what was going on there. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the training that you're going through.
So right now I'm a graduate student. I'm earning my master's degree, which is one of the requirements to become an astronaut for NASA, which is my eventual goal. And so your master's degree is just your 2 years after your undergraduate, where I'm specializing in a really, really specific topic. So in order to be an astronaut, I have to be an expert in one thing that nobody else is an expert in. And the thing that I've decided to be an expert in is plate tectonics on Europa, which is a moon of Jupiter.
Oh, wow.
So right now I take a lot of classes, I read a lot of books, and I have a lot of mentors and people that I work with all across the world, actually, who give me advice. And I'm basically just working on a really small project right now, and then in the future I'm going to work on larger and larger projects. And so this is sort of just the beginning of my astronaut training.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for little kids that might want to be an astronaut someday?
I would say read as many books as you can about whatever you're interested in, because that was how I learned that I was passionate about space. And I learned about what questions hadn't been solved yet by scientists, because I read so many books and I would just keep asking, why this, why this? And I just kept asking that why question, and eventually there wasn't an answer. And that was when I learned that I wanted to be a scientist or an astronaut. And I wanted to answer those why questions for why does our solar system look the way that it does. So, yeah.
Is there a time that you feel comfortable sharing with us about where you felt lonely, or perhaps maybe you have some tips for kids who might be feeling lonely right now?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest loneliness moment that I had was when I first moved to Alaska, which is where I'm in graduate school right now, which is 4,380 miles from home. And I moved there and I did not know anybody. I had no friends. I was living alone for the first time. I was in this entirely new town. And that was really, really scary. And I had a really hard time with that. But through that experience, I've learned a lot about myself and about what keeps me happy. And I've learned that having a really good support system is something that I really need to keep me happy, and having hobbies to keep my mind busy, because when you're not doing something sometimes, you kind of just sit there and you just go through your thoughts, and that's not a really healthy thing to do. And so I have my parents that I call every day. I have a set schedule throughout the week for when I call my friends back home. And I've also made some new friends while I'm there that I get to hang out with. While I think the biggest tip is just keeping your mind busy and knowing that you're not going to be lonely forever. It does end eventually. You will watch. Another thing that I just remembered that helps me with loneliness is watch like movies and documentaries about people, because when you're having an interaction with a person, you're basically exchanging stories, and when you're watching a documentary, you're taking in somebody else's story. And so I really, really love watching documentaries, because I get to watch these people's stories and it feels like I'm closer to somebody, and that really, really helps.
Well, that's a really great idea. All right. Well, thank you so much again for talking with us and sharing your stories.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.